This is Chip Templeton here at Mississippi State University. This weekend we're having the 18th annual Charles H. Templeton Sr. Ragtime and Jazz Festival, and that was my father. We have a museum here at the library called the Charles Templeton Business of Music Museum, and you're welcome to come here during the week and see that on tour. But this weekend, this being our 18th time to do this festival, I have with me someone who's just like family, Mr. Jeff Barnhart from Mystic, Connecticut. Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you, Chip.
How many years is this now you've been here?
Well, I was here for the very first one.
I remember that.
And then I had to go away on other business and returned 6 years later and was able to be part of the festival when Dave Jason, who was a legendary ragtime player, but also historian, researcher, who we've lost, sadly, was still director. And it was that year that he came over and said, I'm thinking of stepping down, and I've spoken with Dean Francis Coleman and Mr. Chip Templeton about my recommendation, you take over. And so they stormed me. And I said, do you really want me, a northerner? Because I'm from Connecticut, but I'm from southern Connecticut.
That's true.
So it's okay.
That's true.
And very southern New England, as southern as you can get. Would you really like me to become involved on a more administrative level? And it's been going great guns ever since. This is year 11 for me. And I could not be more honored to continue this tradition with you.
Well, we feel the same way. You bring a joy and professionalism, and not to mention the wonderful entertainment, because we're not just a music festival, we're a having fun festival, and you bring all that together along with what people are going to learn when they come here. So I don't know what the math was on that, but we think you've been here a good while.
Well, the math
as
was
our artistic director.
Right, the math was I owe you about $10 for those nice words. Man, I'll get you later.
Anyway, so we wanted to take a few minutes and just have a conversation. Some things maybe that are going on here if you've never been here before, to kind of give an idea. We want you to know what when you're seeing this, the festival most likely has already taken place, so we kind of want you to know a little bit about what we're doing, what we've done. And then if we have a few minutes at the end, I want to go down a path you and I've never kind of been down before.
I always like that.
And let's just kind of see where we end up. And
improvisation is the name of the game.
That's right. It's a lot more fun just to have this unrehearsed. So tell our audience about our performers and where all they're coming from and what you were trying to do as the artistic director of recommending these people to come to entertain us this week.
I will do that, but I'll first preface by saying that if indeed you're watching this after the events happened, boy did you miss something amazing. But it's not too late, because quite a bit of it is shown on Mississippi Public Television later on in the year. And as a matter of fact, last year's show, I think, was shown sometime this week.
About 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago.
So you can catch up and find out what you did miss, and perhaps think it would be time to come check it out. The next time, I won't be late, I'll be there on time to see it. And this year, if you did miss it, boy did you miss something, because we have a great lineup of folks. We've got a fellow from New Orleans coming all the way from there to be with us. Long lineage in his family. His name is Louis Ford. He's truly a second generation New Orleans jazz musician and comes from a long lineage of musicians born and bred right there in New Orleans. He's a great reed player, so he'll be playing clarinet, and I'm not sure how many of his saxophones he'll be bringing, but he's a great entertainer, educator, singer, and very dynamic on stage. Just terrific. So proud. This is his debut. Everyone else who's been here made the cut to come back. And so, of course, because I'm the artistic director, I can't just sit around pointing at people saying, you do this. I got to do it too. So I'll be in there doing some. My wife, Anne, will be here on flute and vocals. We make up two halves of the Sweet and Hot Quartet, which appeared 3 years ago, I believe, right here at our event. And that comprises of another fellow from St. Louis, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, where T.J. Muller lives. He's just turned 30. He came originally from England, and he made his big splash in this country with a crossover artist called Pokey Lafarge. And if you look up that name, you may even, if it's an old enough video, you might see TJ playing behind him. He plays trumpet, trombone, banjo, guitar, tuba, but never at the same time. And then in addition, rounding out the quartet is a star percussionist from Davenport, Iowa. His name is Josh Duffy, and he plays all of the great drum sets. He'll be playing what the drummers actually call toys, believe it or not. Tomorrow in the daytime at the museum, we'll be presenting silent film comedy in the form of Buster Keaton and a great show called, a movie of his called Sherlock Jr. Came out in 1924. In addition to the piano accompaniment I'll be giving live during it, Josh will be playing all these great sound effects. So if he slips on a banana peel, Josh is there to go to slide, whoop, you know, that kind of thing. That's going to be great. Really, this has become, this year, I'll get to our final performer in just a moment. Somehow this year we're going up the Mississippi because we have performers from New Orleans, from St. Louis, Missouri,
We're going
from
north, right
Davenport,
direction.
Iowa. We're heading up the Mississippi. And of course, the Mississippi during the ragtime era was the internet of our country. That's how everyone got to know what was going on. They passed off the information that you might hop a train and go west to east. And those were essentially what we would now consider to be the web. The World Wide Web was the Mississippi River and the train system. So it's very exciting that we're celebrating with sound and perhaps imagery some of the great river sounds as well you might have experienced in the heyday of the birth of our music. And to round out our final performer is a fellow who's been here before. His name is Dr. Dave Mazak. Was, because he's retired now, a veterinarian. And he's the only I have to say non-professional in that he didn't eke out a living as a professional musician the way the rest of us are trying to do. He went the legit route and saved a lot of beautiful animals, cuddly puppies and kitties and stuff, but at the same time was playing hot ragtime at festivals and with bands. And now that he's retired, look out, because his chops were always formidable, but he is on fire now. And I cannot wait for him to bring his exciting music and sounds and stories to our audience.
And we don't know what river he's on, but maybe it's the Missouri River since he's also from Missouri. So
It could be.
We'll find out. It's got because you're from the Mystic River.
I'm from the Mystic
in
River.
Connecticut.
So you know we're all just get on a boat and float with us.
Well, thank you for the explanation of that. So it's going to be a great weekend entertainment tonight. We start out the festival with our Gatsby Gala fashion show. That's our 10th year to do that here in the library.
And we're taking a turn on that. 1950s this
1950s this year. So all types of music can be heard. And then tomorrow and the next day we're having events here within the library, within the museum. For instance, the silent movies that Jeff mentioned, but there are lots of other activities going on. But then in the evenings on our Friday and Saturday night, walk them through what the format, you mentioned the entertainer, but kind of walk them through the format of what that's about.
Our two concerts, while they do feature the same musicians, are featured in different combinations, in different orders, and the music you hear on Friday will be completely different from the selections chosen for Saturday. There won't be any repeats. So we have the people I've just mentioned in different guises, different formats, and we keep the sets short so everyone is able to keep the variety going and the audience is never saying, that's a little bit too much of that, I wish there was something else. We want to sort of leave you wanting more. And so that's what's going to be happening. Maybe 10 minutes of this, 15 minutes of that, 20 minutes of that, and then bang, something new. So if you don't know what's going on, neither do we. But we're all going to have a good time at the same time. Two special things involve young people as well. Not that I'm saying that any of our musicians are old. Our youngest is 30. So, and our percussionist is turning the grand old age of 40 very soon.
Oh my goodness.
I know, forget it.
He'll get through it.
I have ties older than that. But the great thing is that on Friday, we have something called the Keon Dosher Award, which is annually granted to the music major who the music department, with whom we started to work quite closely, decides is the most deserving recipient. And it's a scholarship award, I would say. Is that the right way to describe what it is?
There's no scholarship. There's an award, a small
it's a small stipend of thanks.
There you go.
And good luck. You know, go
Right.
out and follow your dream.
But Keon was a special young man who brought more than just music. It was about what he was about, and picking
As a person.
someone that had those qualities is what we're reaching.
So that's what
for.
we're looking for too. Not just great musicianship, but great personhood.
There you go.
And we've managed. You know, there's there's actually a great contest in a way, because sometimes the department has a lot of trouble figuring out just who's the right person. There's so many worthy recipients.
That's right.
So we narrow it down to the creme de la creme, musically and in terms of being a terrific person. And then on Saturday we have an alum coming back.
That's
Somebody
right.
who
This is a very special person we want to talk about.
Yeah, and it's really exciting because she first came as a youngster, I mean a real youngster, maybe just a teenager. I know that she's been here to the event ever since I've taken over. So we're going back to when she was in her teens, and she would come and listen, and she'd come up and she'd say, Mr. Jeff, I want to do that. I'm a piano player too. And gosh, if she hasn't gone on to strength after strength and gave her first solo jazz concert for her church in the town where she and her husband were then living. Now they've returned and they're in the area again, aren't they?
Gwen Elizabeth Sutphin Franklin.
That's right. Try and spell that. That's a big, you know, if she ever becomes a CEO, she's going to have a really long, you won't be able to see her desk.
That's right. But she's an outstanding young lady here in our community, and just brings a joy. And we're so honored that you asked her to play and that she agreed to do so and share a song with us on the Saturday evening.
And if the crowd goes wild, I've already said, you know, do you have one in your back pocket in case they want to hear a second one? And she's already told me yes.
Well, good.
So we're all set with that. So Keon Dosher recipient opens the second half of Friday night. And then Gwen Elizabeth Sutphin Franklin
Gwen
will
Elizabeth.
open the second half of Saturday night. So it's very exciting.
Okay.
Every year is different. Every concert of every year is filled, jam-packed with excitement, surprises, great sounds, history, joy. As you mentioned, joy is what we're all about.
So this is a ragtime festival, and so the audience may know nothing about that, and that's perfectly fine, but we're going to show you a few ragtime songs while you're here. But you're going to hear anything else from a lot of jazz, some blues, stride, and all kind of things. If I left out something in that description, throw it out there.
Maybe some boogie-woogie thrown in,
Okay.
we just don't know. You know, what we try and concentrate, it began as exclusively a ragtime festival and related musics, but we're trying to share truly the birth of all the different elements that would create a uniquely American sound, which is special to us because Charles Templeton was all about that as well. How does it all work? How does it all meld together? And what's the business of that as well as the creativity of that?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned the business of music, because that says it all right there. This is not just a music museum, it's a business of music, and you study it through what all the different businesses that got formed, opportunities for African Americans or women to get involved in a business that they couldn't before, or didn't have the time or opportunity. So let's change topics for just a moment and go a different road before we wrap things up just a minute. At the beginning of our segment, you mentioned a gentleman named David Jason. So I'd like for us to spend a few minutes about him and maybe throw a few ways. The purpose of mentioning this is not only to celebrate him, but if someone came to the Music Museum or they wanted to go online to any of our services, for instance, they could look up all the sheet music online, even print it out if you wanted to. If there are copyright issues and you can't yet print it out, it will let you know that, but you can look up thousands and thousands of sheets. So Dave Jason was a friend of yours for many, many years. He was a friend of my dad for many, many years and actually knew this collection quite well. And then as the museum was put here in the library, I got to know Dave Jason. He's the one that taught me the love of sheet music collecting, which I had zero interest in it before. And after him mentoring me for several years, I'm also a collector. And Connie and I continue to give items that we think that could add to the archives here. So a few years ago, Jeff had another mutual friend who donated her collection here because she knew of the love and the care that this library has for collections. And so we have our collection here, we have the Cleary collection that I was mentioning your friend, and taking those two collections, and if something of great historical value was not in those collections, in the past year, I personally have gone on the hunt for it. And how I went on the hunt for it is by a book that Dave Jason wrote that contains the items that I'm looking for. And for the festival this year, there are 48 pieces of these sheets that were not in those collections. Not only are they now in our collection, but they actually came from Dave Jason's collection. Our mutual friend Dave Jason passed away last year, and the opportunity for his collection for people such as us to obtain those. So we have those up there, and they're on display this week. So I want to talk a little bit about Dave Jason and what he meant to the ragtime genre. And while we're at it, I want to throw up maybe 2 or 3 pieces with you that I know you have a mental picture of. And if you have a comment about those pieces, great. If you don't, we won't put you on the spot. So the first one I like to mention that's hanging up in the library right this moment is a ragtime piece called Pegasus.
Right. And if that means nothing to you, it does every time you go to ExxonMobil to fill up your tank. Because they say, instead of paying cash, use the Pegasus card. Okay. So that's the winged horse. And that was a fellow called James Scott, who was a disciple of Scott Joplin, and actually one of the few Missouri-born classic ragtime composers.
African American.
And African American, that's right. Scott Joplin as well, of course, being African American. And so Pegasus was one of the pieces that he composed and was able to have published by a fellow called John Stark, a Caucasian publisher who really got the ragtime bug from Scott Joplin with the Maple Leaf Rag. And so he started publishing as many of Joplin's works as Joplin would give him to publish. And then Joplin kept saying, well, wait a minute, this guy's good too. You ought to look into his music. James Scott was one of those who was lucky enough to fall under Scott Joplin's ear and then under the umbrella of the John Stark publishing catalog. So he never had this idea that he wanted to be a full-time traveling musician. He decided, I'm going to just settle down. He settled down in a nice small town called Carthage, Missouri, and became a pillar of that community. Not too far at all, no. Yeah. And rather than traveling around, devoted his time to leading the theater orchestra in town, to playing in the church, and also to writing over 20 first-class ragtime pieces. So he's very important. Pegasus is extremely rare. And to show you an idea of how rare some of these pieces are when they show up, or if they don't show up, and then you're waiting for them to show up. The Templeton collection itself of sheet music, housed in the museum, is how many thousands of pieces?
About
it's huge.
25,000.
25,000. Mm-hmm. Janice Cleary bequeathed to the school, let's say, 33,000 additional sheets. So now you're looking at over 60,000 sheets, and Pegasus wasn't among those 60,000. Now it is.
That's right.
It's in your collection eventually will become part of the namesake of the Templeton.
That is our hope and desire. That was written in 1920, and one of the reasons it's so rare, that was at the end of the grand ragtime era, and it probably didn't sell many copies.
That's right.
That's why
only a couple more would come out afterwards of James Scott, and John Stark, one of the very last ones was from 1922, and it said, "Don't jazz me, rag. I'm ragtime."
That's the one that we don't have, and we're still looking for that.
So if anybody of you out there has it in your attic, please get in touch, because we could certainly use one.
Right.
We don't have one yet.
But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed looking at Pegasus on your screen there. So I have another one that I like for us to pull up right quick and talk about is Stop Time Rag.
Yep, the Stop Time Rag, again, by Scott Joplin this time. Extremely rare. Didn't sell well whatsoever. And what year was that? You know that.
1910.
1910. And was it published by Stark? Do you recall?
Yes.
Okay. So who knows why? It just, the year before, he'd had some that would become pretty good hits in his day, and now are extremely well-known. Pineapple Rag is one of them, from 1909. But that was not published by Stark. That was published by Seminary Music from New York City. By now they're in New York. And that could be why Stop Time didn't go too far. Because by now they're in New York. And New York, frankly, by 1910, had started moving away from ragtime, starting to look at more, quote-unquote, modern sounds. Stop Time is one of those rare rags in that it's a novelty rag, in a sense.
That may be why it wasn't successful. Maybe we weren't ready for a novelty rag.
Perhaps, because within it, in addition to the stopping that's happening, hence stop time, right? it stops and there's a thumping going on from the pianist's foot. So even though the music is going dun, 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 you hear that continual stopping. So two things are happening. First of all, that's a surprise.
I don't know of another tune that has that.
Right. What's the other one? There's another one he wrote that has that too. Ragtime Dance, I believe.
Yes.
The shorter version. But now coming back to why that's so cool, the name itself, whether it was Joplin who came up with it or Stark, is so evocative because what does this sound like to you? It sounds like the second hand on your watch, the tick-tock,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
So there's lots of layers, and that's one of the things that's so great about discovering these things. To me, beautifully written ragtime compositions are as important as things by Mozart, by Bach. They're our American legacy and heritage, the earliest American music we have. And what you're hearing, if you're at all interested in the dynamism of the music through our discussion of it, you're going to get that at the museum or at any of the festivals that would occur that would feature that music. Search it out, you won't be sorry, and you're going to learn a lot about what makes America so unique from a music standpoint.
Well, thank you very much for the interview. It's been a lot of fun, and we hope our audience has enjoyed our conversation and those graphics that you've seen on these two rags that we explained. So thank you for listening, and we hope that you'll come to our events, and if you're in town, please go here to the library and visit the Charles H. Templeton Music Museum on the 4th floor here in the Mitchell Memorial Library. Thank you.